Now is the moment when the DNA discoveries have recently proven her to be correct about so many of her controversial ideas. It's such an important time for us to revisit Gimbutas, her life, her work, because establishment archaeologists, having failed to completely erase her, have decided to make this collective effort to do so now. The irony is that now is the moment when the DNA discoveries have recently proven her to be correct about so many of her controversial ideas. Surely the rest cannot be so casually thrown out or debunked, as they like to say. In 1991, in her Civilization of the Goddess, she described large-scale population shifts to the north and northwest are indirect evidence of a catastrophe of such proportions that cannot be explained by possible climatic change, land exhaustion, or epidemics. These are the ways that the scholars tried to push back against her Kurgan theory, her invasion theory. She described 3 waves of invasion beginning in 4500 BCE with the emergence, she said, of a whole complex of Kurgan cultural traits: hilltop settlements, the presence of horses, the predominance of a pastoral economy, signs of violence and patriarchy, and religious symbols that emphasize a sun cult. The second wave brought a transition, she says, from a matristic to a patriarchal era in which the culture was transformed beyond recognition. And the third, most devastating wave, which she had named 60 years before, the DNA evidence confirmed it, was a, quote, massive infiltration that caused drastic changes in the ethnic configuration of old Europe. The invaders pushed into Greece, she said, causing a gruesome takeover, and the people who were able fled to safer places like Troy, Malta, and Crete, where many of the old European cultural traditions were carried on. Now, I thought about bringing up a video of Colin Renfrew in, I think, 2018 at a tribute to Gimbutas. Colin Renfrew was one of her students. He lived in her house for a while. He was close with her. Then he turned and became an enemy, at least an academic enemy, and really became part of the crew of archaeological academicians who spent a lot of time putting her down and putting down her theories and acting as if her ideas were frivolous or kind of girly, kind of soft, whereas none of this is true. And he just said she won, basically. He said the DNA evidence, the work on the DNA, has completely rejuvenated Marija Gimbutas' hypothesis. And that's really important because he had a hypothesis that was the antithesis of hers. So they were in that dichotomous relationship for a long time, for decades. Then he says she ends up as the triumphant precursor of much current work, which is so true. She was so early, she was so spot on that they just have to say, oh, well, what do you know? She said it such a long time ago. And then he said, what is clear is that Marija Gimbutas showed remarkable insights for her Kurgan invasion, now known as the Yamnaya invasion, for any of you who are keeping up on this. And finally, the last sentence of his presentation in this video, a public talk, he said, the Kurgan hypothesis is magnificently validated by recent work. So bravo, Colin Renfrew, because some of the others are trying to backpedal now and figure out some way of explaining the DNA evidence in some way that doesn't completely validate her, but it does. So I appreciate that he came clean. in public.